Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Woodward Cavers. I am the reader advisor here at New Canaan Library. I am very happy to have Grace Young here from Chinatown. We actually heard from a gentleman in New Canaan, Doug Walker, who I know Grace wants to say a special thank you to. So when I allow her to talk, I'm sorry, Grace, I'm talking too much, but we really want to thank Doug for bringing us Grace to our attention. We had started a small cooking show with Anna Goss, and he saw that and said, oh, you got to have the Wok Guru on your show. So we're happy to have her. All right. Grace has been named the Poet Laureate of the Wok. She has devoted her career to demystifying the ancient cooking utensil for use in contemporary kitchens. An award-winning cookbook author, culinary historian, and filmmaker, Grace has been a fierce advocate for Chinatown, never more so than in her recent video series, Coronavirus Chinatown Stories, produced in collaboration with videographer Dan Ahn and Poster House, which documents the toll of the pandemic on New York City's Chinese community. In 2020, the series was shown at the Smithsonian. She is also partnering with the James Beard Foundation on an Instagram campaign to save Chinese restaurants, hashtag, all across the country. Grace, welcome to New Canaan Library. We are very, very happy to have you here.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Laura. And yes, I would like to give a big shout out, thank you to my friend Douglas Walker, who introduced me to you. And it's just been wonderful working with you before this program. And I'm very, very happy that we can do this.
We're very
today,
happy.
I just wanted to start. So I'm going to give you a little stir fry and wok lesson. I've been doing these programs on Zoom for the last year, and it's pretty remarkable that we're able to do this. So I have my computer set up so you can see me, and I have my iPhone on a tripod so you can look into my wok. And I chose a very simple dish, Aromatic Vegetarian Fried Rice. And I think, Laura, everyone should have the recipe or access to it if they want it. So you could possibly cook along with me. I chose this dish because it doesn't have any exotic ingredients. I don't have room here. I don't have counter space to show you any prep. So I've already prepped all my ingredients, and everything is really basic. The carrots are cut into a 1/4-inch dice. The red bell pepper is a 1/2-inch dice. So there's nothing really too complicated here. But why I wanted to show you this recipe is it's a fantastic one pot, or shall I call it one wok meal. It's very, very practical because most days I'm working, I lose track of time, or at least once a week, I'm working, I lose track of time, I look up and I realize that I need to make dinner. And if I have some cooked rice in the refrigerator, I know I can make fried rice within less than 15 minutes. So this is a very practical one wok meal. It's very healthy. The entire recipe has 2 tablespoons of cooking oil and a little sesame oil. You could skip the sesame oil if you wanted to. So for 4 servings, you're only getting 1.5 teaspoons of fat per serving, lots of vegetables. This is a vegetarian dish, but I like this because there are so many people out there in the audience these days who are vegetarian. And so if you wanted to add meat towards the end, as I'm adding the rice and the shiitake mushrooms and the bell peppers and eggs, that at that point you could add some cooked diced ham. You could add diced roast chicken or turkey. If you had some cooked shrimp, this is the point where you could add it. So this is a great versatile dish for vegetarians and non-vegetarians, and it really shows off the brilliance of the wok. So let's just start by going over the ingredients, which I've already prepped ahead of time. I have 2 let me just show you this. It's hard for me to do this, but I want you to see that I've prepped all my ingredients and I actually have them lined up in the order that I'm going to use them. And this is very
One, just
yes.
one, a lot of people are asking me to turn off my video so that you become bigger.
Oh,
But I want to explain to everyone, I have to stay on as host of all of this. But it is when you get into the view, the gallery view, whoever is talking will be the bigger person. So Grace will talk. If her walk is louder than Grace, the walk will be big. So that is how it's going to, that's the best sort of viewing of this. So anyway, continue, Grace.
I think the other thing they can do, but I'm not quite sure about this, is on the upper right-hand corner, there's that blue. Is there some sort of blue button and they can actually choose me? They can pin me if they want to see a bigger picture of me, or they could pin the walk, but I'm not sure. Computer technology is not my thing. Walks.
Right. No, it's the gallery view should just be showing you and the walk, whoever is talking, and then the other people will be small up at the top. So
Okay,
that's
all
what
right.
I'm just. That's
So,
anyway. Sorry for that.
So I have all my ingredients prepped ahead of time, and this is what you really need to be doing when you're stir frying, because once you start stir frying, you cannot step away for a second just to finish mincing the cilantro or pulling the cashews out of the bag. Everything has to be prepped ahead of time. You're going to be cooking on high heat, and so you need your full concentration. So I'm just going to tilt my tripod here just so that you can see how all my ingredients have been prepped. And can you see that? I have them all in the order that I'm going to be using them. So here's the oil. Do you see that? I'm not sure. The shallots, garlic, carrots. So you more or less get the idea. And now I'm going to put this back into position. Everything is pretty tight here. Can you see the wok again? Yeah.
Yep, that's good.
So let me just show you. This is the oil that's already been measured out. Let me see. This is the spot. This is the sweet spot. This is 2 tablespoons of oil. Traditionally, the Chinese use peanut oil. The most important thing is you need to have an oil that has a high smoking point. So other high smoking point oils would be grapeseed, safflower, sunflower, canola. Low smoking point oils like extra virgin olive oil or even olive oil would be not the right choice, because when you have a hot pan and you add a low smoking point oil, it's going to start smoking immediately. And that means when the oil is smoking, it means that the oil is actually, the chemical structure of the oil has broken down and you've actually destroyed the oil. So 2 tablespoons of a high smoking point oil. Then I have 1/3 cup of minced shallots. If you don't have shallots, you could use onions. You could use scallions. This recipe is really just a basic recipe. And from watching me do this, you can take off and do your own thing. This is a tablespoon of minced garlic. If you don't like garlic, skip the garlic. If you like ginger, you can mince ginger instead. This is 1 cup of diced carrots, and it's diced into 1/4 inch pieces. If you don't like carrots, you could use parsnips. If you don't like parsnips, another hard vegetable, you could use the stems of broccoli. So feel free to, the brilliant thing about fried rice is oftentimes when I'm making fried rice, I actually clear out my refrigerator. I open up the vegetable bin. I see that I have like a handful of green beans left over. I have a little bit of broccoli. I have some red bell peppers. And so I just use up all those vegetables. So it's a very forgiving recipe. This is my rice, which I've already cooked ahead of time. And it's 4 cups of cooked rice. The most important thing about fried rice is that you cook the rice ahead of time, fluff it after it's cooled down, and then refrigerate it. If you don't fluff it, if you just put it into the refrigerator directly, it's going to refrigerate, it's going to become this solid mass. So you want to break it up before you put it into the refrigerator. And the reason why you cannot use freshly cooked rice for fried rice is because it's too hot and moist, and that results in a sticky, gummy fried rice. So that's why I like to have cooked rice. Whenever I make rice, I make extra, and then I put it in the refrigerator. And that's why, like, when I'm suddenly working, I look up, it's 7 o'clock, I haven't done anything about dinner. I know, because I have some cooked rice in the refrigerator, that I can make dinner within 15 minutes. So here's our next ingredient. This is 1 cup of thinly sliced shiitake mushrooms. If you don't like shiitake mushrooms, you could use domestic mushrooms. You could use cremini, portobellos. This is a 1/2 cup of diced red bell pepper, and it's been cut into 1/2 inch pieces. Now, the important thing that I should mention to you is when you're cutting the vegetables, the carrots, the shiitake mushrooms, the bell peppers, try to cut it as uniformly as possible. So if you have 1/2 inch pieces of the bell pepper, but you also made some 1/4 inch pieces and some 1 inch pieces, that means the 1 inch pieces are going to take longer to cook. So that is a very, very fundamental rule to stir frying, that you want the pieces to be as consistent as possible in size. This is 2 large eggs that have been beaten. And then I have a tablespoon of soy sauce, already measured out. Now let's talk about soy sauce. People are often asking me what my favorite soy sauce is. And just in general, I really like the Kikkoman Organic, which is available at Whole Foods. It's widely available. I like it because it has organic soybeans, no artificial preservatives. But soy sauce, as many of you know, is very high in sodium. So this is 990 milligrams. This one here, I'm just going to give you a little show and tell soy sauce. This is an incredible soy sauce made by a company called Zhongba, which has existed in China for, I think, 150 years in Sichuan province. And you can buy this from a store, an online store called the Mala Market, M-A-L-A Market, and they specialize in Sichuan ingredients. And this is a really fabulous soy sauce.
The Mala Market, I'm sorry, Mala Market is in Chinatown, or is it online?
No, it's online. It's online, and they specialize in Sichuan ingredients. I'm sorry, I forgot to give you that link. But
I've put it in the chat.
Perfect. And so, but the sodium, the quality of this soy sauce, the flavor is off the charts because it's been aged for 1 year, but the sodium is 1,175 milligrams. So that's not, I mean, I feel as though the American diet, we already consume way too much sodium. And so using a tablespoon of that soy sauce is really, I wait for very special occasions to do that, to use it. I have discovered a fabulous Japanese soy sauce called, the brand is Yamasa, Y-A-M-A-S-A, and it's just called less salt soy sauce. And the flavor is fantastic. It's really rich and flavorful. And the sodium on this is only 520 milligrams. And I think I gave you the link for a market in Chinatown called Po Wing Hong. And they sell a soy sauce that is made in Taiwan. And the brand is Kimlan, and it's called lower sodium soy sauce. And that's only 506 milligrams. So that's a great option too. So that's your little soy sauce talk. And then here's my salt. I just want you to see, I have the teaspoon of salt measured, and this is 1/4 teaspoon of white pepper. And I'm just going to combine them together just so that I have one less little bowl to add to the wok once we get cooking. Here is 1/2 cup of cashews that have been roasted. but I roasted them. Traditionally, people always roast nuts by putting them in the oven. I prefer to roast them in the wok. So I put them into a cold wok with no oil in it. I set the heat on medium low, and then I just stir fry it for like 3 minutes until they turn a golden color. And I prefer wok roasted nuts to oven roasted, because whenever I do it in the oven, I'm constantly checking and nothing has changed. And then I wait an extra 10 seconds, and then the next moment I check, they burned. So in the wok, you can really control it because you see the nuts gradually changing color. So that's a half cup of the roasted cashews. And if you don't like cashews, you could use almonds, you could use pine nuts. So this is a recipe that has a great deal of flexibility. This is 2 tablespoons of minced cilantro. And then finally, 1 to 2 teaspoons of the roasted Asian sesame oil and a little chili garlic sauce. And with the sesame oil, my favorite brand is Kadoya. And the most important thing when you're choosing sesame oil is to make sure it says pure or 100%, because the brands that you don't want to get often put vegetable oil in, and maybe there's only 20 or 30% sesame oil in the product. This is a new sesame oil that I just discovered, but this brand has apparently existed since 1886. And there's really not, the brand is Kuki, K-U-K-I, and it's looks like this. And I just found it in Dynasty Market in Chinatown. It's only like $4 or so. The chili garlic sauce, the most popular brand is Huyfong, Huyfong. I can even find this in my American supermarket. So we've gone over the ingredients, and now let's talk about the wok. So this is my 14-inch flat bottom carbon steel wok, and this is what I recommend for most home cooks. The traditional wok is round bottom, but you want a flat bottom because a round bottom wok is going to wobble on your stove. And in order to stop it from wobbling, you have to put a wok ring. And the moment you put a wok ring, the wok is too far from the heat. And a wok ring will not work if you have induction, electric, ceramic glass top. So this is fantastic because it sits close to the heat, it's going to get hotter, and yet it maintains the integrity of the wok shape. This is carbon steel, and the material the wok is made of is very, very important. Carbon steel is like cast iron, and the more you cook with it, the more it becomes naturally non-stick. So I've been cooking with this wok for 20 years, and I barely need any oil to stir fry with it. I call it ancient nonstick cookware. I am not a fan at all of nonstick woks. I think they belong in the garbage. Stir frying should be done on high heat, and many nonstick pans are not intended to be used on high heat. The manufacturer will actually tell you that you should be using medium or medium high, and that when you're cooking on high heat with modern nonstick cookware, it's releasing a toxic chemical. So I am totally against nonstick cookware. Stainless steel is not great because it doesn't acquire the natural nonstick surface of a carbon steel wok. And what are your other options? People often ask me, well, can I just use a skillet? You could certainly use a skillet, but the brilliance of a wok is that it has high sides. It can hold a huge volume of food. In a skillet, one chef said to me, every time you shovel the food, you scoop it up, you're just pushing it to the other side of the skillet. Whereas in a wok, because of the concave shape, each time the food is just tumbling, which is exactly what you want. So I prefer the 14-inch flat bottom with the wood handles. And I gave a source to Laura for where you can buy it in New York City. There's a wonderful store called KK Discount, and it has been in Chinatown for over 30 years. It's run by Mr. and Mrs. Lee, and it's a multi-generational business, and they've had a really tough time in the last 20 months. They also have an online site where you could buy the wok. I will warn you that the online site is really badly designed. It's Mr. and Mrs. Lee can take the criticism, but you can still buy the wok, and I think it's $30, and the shipping is pretty inexpensive. So that's a wonderful way to support Chinatown right now. And the last
So Grace,
thing,
Grace, I have put all that into the chat. So everyone, if you want to look to your chat, all of the stores that Grace is talking about, they're in the chat for you to have.
good.
Go ahead, Grace. So sorry.
That's okay. So I just started preheating my wok, and as it preheats, I'm just going to give you a little discussion about spatulas. And most people, of course, want to get a Chinese spatula. This is an old Chinese spatula that I bought in Hong Kong years ago, and they don't make them this way anymore. There's something odd about the new spatulas, Chinese spatulas that are made, and the new ones are too big, and they actually scratch the surface of the wok. So I wish I could recommend a Chinese spatula, but I haven't found one yet that I really like, except for the old ones. Lots of people want to stir fry with wood. I do not recommend wood because it's too thick. Look at the edge of this spatula. You can see it's a scant, maybe 1/8 of an inch, and that is too thick. When you're stir frying something like rice or noodles, it's not going to get underneath the food. Also with chicken, beef, it's going to start ripping the meat. So do not use wood. I suggest that you actually use what is the old-fashioned American pancake spatula, or this one, which is called a fish spatula. They're actually very, very thin, so the metal gets right under the food. And especially this fish spatula has a little curve to it, and there's flexibility. So it fits the curve of the wok, and it's really nice to get under. So
Grace, what about plastic ones or these hard plastic spatulas?
I am very anti-nonstick and plastic. I think it's totally unnatural, and the heat and the plastic and the food is not a great combination. I feel like it's totally unnatural, and I suspect that that's why, well, the more people cook with nonstick cookware, you always see the scratch marks, right? So where is the chemical surface going but into our bodies? And plastic cookware, the spatulas, I feel the same way. I do not want plastic touching my food. So I've been preheating the wok. And how do you test when the wok is correctly preheated? Because your stove might be an ordinary New York City stove, and it might take you like 5 or 10 minutes to preheat it. I have a KitchenAid stove. It's residential. It's a little bit more powerful than a New York City apartment stove. And some people might have a Wolf or Viking range. So I can't give you a certain amount of time, but I always take a little dish of water and I flick a drop of water, and the water should evaporate within 1 second. So we are pretty close here. If you're new to wok cooking, I would say then turn off the heat and then add the oil. I'm more experienced, so I immediately add the oil. And the reason why I say turn off the heat is just because if you're a little clumsier, things can get out of hand. And the other thing I just wanted to say is when you do that drop of water, sometimes people add more than 1 drop. And so be very careful. If there's still some water, when you add the oil, it's going to spatter back at you. So I'm going to swirl the oil around the edge of the wok. And then I'm going to add the minced shallots. And I don't know if you can pick up on the sound of the sizzling. Can you hear that, Laura?
I can.
Good. So it doesn't have to be a loud sizzle, but the sizzle indicates that the wok is correctly heated. If there's no sizzle, then you didn't preheat the wok correctly. So it's just for a few seconds until it's fragrant. And now I'm immediately adding the carrots. And now I'll stir fry this for like a minute or two. Are there any questions, Laura?
So far, I have one question. It says, hello, Grace. I follow you on Wok Wednesdays and love all the work you're doing. I am scared to use my somewhat new wok for teaming or for anything liquid. I'm afraid I haven't built the thick enough patina to be able to use it with the liquids. Had it for about 4 months and cook in it 2 to 3 times a week. Thank you. So I guess she's not really a question.
Okay. Well, that's lovely.
Let you know you've got a fan base out there. Let me see, there might be another question. I have to go into.
So I'm going to add the rice now. The carrots are ready.
Okay.
And then I will address this issue about the delicate patina in a second. You might have to remind me. I'm adding the rice, the shiitake mushrooms, the bell peppers. I'm just going to give this a little bit of a stir fry. Now I said thinly sliced shiitake mushrooms. By that I mean like about 1/4 of an inch thick. A lot of people don't know this, that you cannot eat raw shiitake mushrooms. For some people, if they ate a raw shiitake mushrooms, you can get a rash. So now I'm sprinkling the salt and the white pepper. Don't add it all in one spot, and then swirling in the soy sauce.
So people are asking about cauliflower rice. Can that be used?
Sure, you could definitely use cauliflower rice. In
And
fact,
is there,
besides cauliflower rice, you could use brown rice. I'm using jasmine rice here. Once you understand this concept, you could use bulgur, you could use couscous.
is there a particular order for putting the food into the wok?
Yeah, exactly the way it's written in the recipe.
By the way, the recipe is in her books, but you can also get it online. We have it actually at the library printed out. And if ever you come into the library, we'd be happy to get you a copy for you.
So I just want you to see, look, there's absolutely no sticking. This is ancient nonstick cookware. It's the healthiest thing for you. And like a cast iron skillet, the heat transfers iron from the pan into your food. So when I was writing my book, Stir Frying to the Sky's Edge, I interviewed a dietitian who said to me, she's a vegetarian, and for years she's been cooking from a carbon steel wok, and her iron levels are always perfect. She's getting iron from the pan, which is actually much more healthy and natural than taking a supplement. So we're almost done here, and now I'm just going to add the cashews, the cilantro, and finally the sesame oil and the chili garlic. Wow, I wish you could smell this because it is so fragrant. Oh my God. So when I added the rice with the bell peppers and the egg and the soy sauce, salt, and pepper, that's where you would add the cooked meat if you wanted to make this a non-vegetarian fried rice. And look at this, absolutely no sticking, right?
Now, would you be adding the meat? It would be already cooked?
Yes.
Or would it be raw? Okay.
It would be cooked for sure.
It would
So
all be
cooked
cooked.
turkey, you could do cooked diced turkey. You could do cooked diced roast pork, chicken. You could dice up some shrimp, cooked shrimp. So it'd be fantastic. Sometimes I put crab meat, which is absolutely decadent. So this is done. You see how fast this goes? It's a really wonderful dish. And you should make sure that you use whatever vegetables are in season.
So people are worried about the scraping, and yet you were talking about that really that iron getting into your food is good for you.
Now, you look at this. There's no scraping. There are no scratch marks in my wok. And I did a video last year, which everyone can watch by just going to YouTube and searching for the Wok Therapist. And it actually discusses all the anxieties and stresses people who have never used a wok before go through. And so it's a comedy. I think it's about 3 minutes long. I'm very proud it won a James Beard Award last year, but it will actually cover some of your basic questions and anxieties about working with a carbon steel wok. And so now we should go on to watching the video, which is only like 3 minutes long.
Yeah.
And then I'll talk a little bit about the work that I've been doing in Chinatown.
That's great. I just want to let Anita Waxberg know I see your hand is up, which means that you want to speak. So I'm going to wait till the end. I'm sorry, Anita. We've got to just keep things going, especially while Grace was putting in all of her ingredients. All right, so I am now going to share my screen. I hope I can do this correctly.
I'm going to eat.
How dare you? Okay.
I am definitely depressed, kind of. I definitely know this is not going to go quickly, and I don't know what to tell to my worker, because I've been optimistic, like I say. Oh, we still chat away, you know, like, oh, how you doing, and what did you eat today? But I don't know. I don't know what to say to them after today. It's so new, and I don't think it's going to go away. I don't think I can open in a month, 2 months, 3 months. I don't know when I can open.
When did you you tried takeout for a few days?
We did a very good delivery, but we still have to shut it down because our worker are afraid of their safety, because we have this still xenophobia, right? And they have to take the subway when finished work is about 10, 11. They just, the fear, their family are really worried about their safety. Like saying you go to work, you might not come back or something, you know, get harmed. It's just, and maybe we think, oh, this is hysterical, but it's real for us in the Chinese community. They're afraid of their safety. They're afraid the virus. They're afraid this virus is going to infest it in their community. Then it's really the stigma and saying, look, the Chinese have all the virus.
Right.
We are afraid of our safety. Yesterday, my waiter, he live in Queens, so he take the subway to come here to check on me. He say he's so afraid. He was a young guy. He say he's afraid because before this, 2 weeks ago, he got pushed by people. He got pushed. He look at where he look. He know that person is not it's not an accident. It's purposely push him. Because I go through 9/11, you know, and it's real. At 9/11, we have to close because it was blocked below Canal, right? We are right below Canal, and everything blocked. And when they saying, oh, you can come back like after 1 week, so we go back and we clean. We clean for 3 days. The dust was that our restaurant. The dust was that thick. We mop for 3 days. Just clean out the dust. Mop, mop, mop. It come back. Mop, mop, mop for 3 days. We throw everything away. We start all over again. That's 9/11. But this is worse than 9/11. This is, I don't know. I just don't know what to say. I have no word. It's so bad.
Oh, I'm so sorry. One moment. There we go.
Good. Can I speak now, Laura?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
So sorry. Go right ahead.
So let me just tell you a little bit about my personal experience of what happened to Chinatown. At the start of 2020, I thought I was going to be writing a new cookbook. Normally, I'm in New York City a few times a week. And in January and February of 2020, I knew something was really wrong. Chinatown was strangely empty. There was no outbreak of coronavirus in Chinatown, but because of the rhetoric from Washington, there was a shunning of Chinatowns all across the United States, from San Francisco to New York, Boston, Chicago. All the Chinatowns felt it, and restaurants and small business, little shops, saw their businesses drop 40 to 80%. My work for Chinatown actually began in March, and it's because of Julia Knight, who is the director of Poster House. And for those of you who don't know, Poster House is this incredible jewel of a museum that just started 2 years ago in New York City. And they had just opened a Chinese exhibition of vintage and modern Chinese posters. And they had asked me if I would do some cultural lectures about food. And so I had never spoken to Julia. And on March 13th, Friday, March 13th, she calls me up and she says, all the museums in New York City have closed. We're all at home. I know that Chinatown is hurting. What can Poster House do to help? And I have since met Julia several times, and she is an extraordinary woman and truly an angel to Manhattan's Chinatown. So I told her that in February and March, I had been doing posts on Instagram and Facebook about different businesses in Chinatown and trying to get people to come and support these businesses. I had written an essay in Food and Wine magazine about what was happening to Manhattan's Chinatown and to tell people to show their support. So I said to her, I had this idea that I wanted to go into Manhattan's Chinatown and to interview restaurant and shop owners and to have them tell their stories of what they had been experiencing for the last couple of months. And it was my hope that when New Yorkers heard these stories, that they would rally their support. And she said to me, if you do these videos, we will post them on the Poster House website. And then she said, how soon can you do this? And I think left to my own devices, I probably wouldn't have done anything for weeks. But because she asked that question, I said, I'll do it this weekend. And so that's how I ended up being in Chinatown on Sunday, March 15th. And as you just saw from the May Chow interview, we ended up interviewing May. At the time, May was very, very upbeat. We did not shoot what you just saw. We shot May talking about how she was not closing her business. She was super upbeat and she was just going to proceed. But we did 3 other interviews with restaurant owners and 1 with a shop owner. And 2 of them told us that they were closing the following day, that business was so bad. And both of them, the owner of Hop Key Restaurant, which has existed in Chinatown for over 50 years, Peter Lee, had tears in his eyes and he said, I have no choice. I have to close. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. We interviewed the owner of New Shanghai Deluxe, and she was crying through the interview and said, this is the hardest decision I've ever made. All the people that work for me are like family. Peter Lee said the same thing, that his workers had been with him 10, 20, 30 years. We went into Wo Hop, which is the 2nd oldest restaurant in Chinatown. It dates from 1938. And the manager there, I do not know how he knew it, but he said 70% of the restaurants in Chinatown will close the following day because business is so bad. All of them were suffering, like they had lost 80% of their business. So this was a heart-wrenching experience to just do these interviews And a few hours after we left Chinatown, Mayor de Blasio actually announced that he was putting New York City into lockdown and that all restaurants would close except for takeout. So it turns out that because of Julia Knight, we were in Chinatown, and this was truly one of the saddest days in Chinatown's history, and it was gut-wrenching. We were recording living history, and it was the last day Chinatown was as we think of it, because when Chinatown reopened June 8th, there were businesses that were open that Sunday that never reopened. So the first two videos that we shot were immediately posted on Poster House's website within 48 hours. We named the video series Coronavirus Chinatown Stories. They can still be viewed on the Poster House website, and they have since been shown at the Smithsonian. We realized after we did the May interview that it was already obsolete because she had been so upbeat. So we went, several days later, we went back to the restaurant and we interviewed her. And by then she had actually closed. She tried takeout for one day and realized it was just pointless. So that's when we interviewed her, and we were extremely lucky that she was so brutally honest in addressing how depressing the situation was. And as you saw, she spoke about how fearful the workers were to come to work. She told me at the time that there was a Chinese restaurant in Midtown, and there the delivery men refused to come in because they were afraid that every delivery that they went on could be a setup for someone to attack them. So Chinatown workers were dealing not only with the fear of possibly catching coronavirus by taking a subway, by showing up at their job, by catching it from a coworker, so they were dealing with all these fears. And on top of it, they also had the added fear of being attacked for being Asian. And as we did these interviews, the other owners, no one addressed the issue of the anti-Asian hate, but it was something that all Asian Americans were aware of at the time. And it was truly shocking that we were suddenly a target of hate. If you go on the Poster House website, there are actually 2 more videos about May. The second video we shot 2 months later. We were still in the middle of lockdown, so we shot it May 15th. And that's when May decided to reopen for just takeout. And the entire time we were in lockdown, she said that her landlord was hassling her every single day for the rent. And she had 6 employees before she shut the business. And for that period that she was open for takeout, only 2 employees were willing to return. The third video that we shot of May was actually shot in June after she had decided to close. So she only lasted 1 month with takeout. By that point, only 1 employee was willing to come in. And so I would go in there to visit May just to check up on her. And she said that she had never worked harder in her life. She was physically going around Chinatown to shop for the ingredients. She was doing prep, she was doing cooking. She was taking orders by phone, orders online. The helper that she had didn't speak English, and so it was all on May. She was packing the orders. She was running from the kitchen to the front of the house to do delivery, to hand over the food to the customers as they walked in. She said she never worked harder in her life, and she made 20% of what she had made pre-COVID. So during the lockdown, which was end of March, April, May, and then the first week of June, I went into Chinatown almost every day. And Chinatown looked like a Hollywood set of Chinatown. It was unbelievable. There were no people, there were no cars, there was no traffic. Normally Mott Street is bumper to bumper. There were no cars even parked on Mott Street. I took photographs. You could just see the entire Chinatown was emptied out. And we had about 300 restaurants in Chinatown. Only 29 of them remained open for takeout, and all of them were struggling. At that point, New York City was the epicenter. We were averaging 700 to 800 deaths per day. And at that same time, April of 2020, CNN reported that 59% of independently owned Chinese restaurants had seized their credit card and debit card transactions, implying that they had permanently closed. And so at that point, P.F. Chang's, which is the largest Chinatown chain, received a $5 to $10 million PPP loan, and they reported that their sales had doubled. So these losses really, well, at that point then, June 8th, we reopened, and we had lost many, many legacy businesses, restaurants that had been in Chinatown for over 65 years, and a bakery that had been there for 50 years, a produce market over 40 years, several restaurants that were in Chinatown for 40, 50 years. And the losses really scared me. So for the first time in my life, I saw the possibility of losing Chinatown. I reached out to Brian Lair and was on the show to talk about what was happening in Chinatown. I was on the World Public Radio, talking and trying to raise awareness of what was happening. All Things Considered had me on June 8th talking about the reopening of Chinatown. And I realized that I was in a unique position to try and help Chinatown between the food media contacts that I knew. I didn't know a lot of people, and my reputation as a Chinese cookbook author, that I could be a voice for the voiceless. And so we were able to get press in the Smithsonian, BBC, Vogue, Food and Wine, Huffington Post. And by fall, I started, I think Laura mentioned this, I partnered with the James Beard Foundation to start the Save Chinese Restaurants campaign. It was I learned so much about Chinatown during this period. And one of the things that I learned is that Chinatowns in San Francisco, New York, and Boston are dependent on tourists. And in 2019, New York City had 66.5 million tourists. 2020, we had no tourists. So Chinatown really felt the loss of having no tourism. Chinatown is right next door to the court. So normally when you're on jury duty, people eat in Chinatown. It lost that revenue stream. It lost 300,000 lower Manhattan workers were no longer there. University students who normally like to go to Chinatown to get a cheap meal, that all evaporated. And so it was just locals supporting Chinatown, and that has not been enough in New York City or San Francisco. In New York City, Chinatown businesses, 94% of them are mom and pop, and it is the last neighborhood south of Manhattan, south of 96th Street, that is not gentrified. 67% of the businesses have no website. There's no social media. Some of the businesses are really sort of like circa 1950. They're cash only, and that's part of the charm of it, but it also means that they are less capable of surviving right now. So right now, the situation is, you would think it would be better because more people are vaccinated. This summer, there's been more vitality during the daytime, but we are still operating with just basically locals supporting Chinatown, and that is not enough. And because of the rise in anti-Asian hate crimes, it becomes more challenging because locals are afraid to come out at night for dinner. And so many stores that used to be open until 7 or 8 o'clock now close at 4:30 or 5 so that their employees can get home. So it's been a really terrifying time. Hate crimes against Asians in New York City has spiked 356% since last year. Since the start of the pandemic, there have been over 9,000 hate crime incidents nationwide. And the number is undoubtedly much higher because most people don't report the crimes when they happen. So the latest thing that I have done is just last week, I launched a new campaign with the James Beard Foundation and with Poster House, and it is called Love AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander. Our first campaign last year was to save Chinese restaurants, but it's not just Chinese restaurants that are hurting. It's Thai, Vietnamese, Korean, all Asian American businesses, not just restaurants, are suffering right now. And so we're asking everyone, if you're on Instagram or Facebook, to post a video or a photograph of your favorite business and tell us a story about why it's meaningful to you, and use the hashtag #LoveAAPI and tell your followers and friends to do the same thing. And the most important thing is to bring your business to these poor restaurants and shops. Last year in April, we had lost 220,000 Asian American businesses after just 4 months of dealing with the shunning of Asian Americans. And so right now, any business that is still open is definitely hanging by a thread. They have been dealing with mounting bills and rent. Some of the landlords have been a little forgiving. Many of them, I've heard, have not given an inch. And so these businesses are really suffering and they really need our support. So if you can, please participate in the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter campaign and use the hashtag #LoveAAPI. So the story is much bigger than that, but I see that we're running out of time. So I just wanted to leave a little time so we have an opportunity to do Q&A.
Thank you so much, Grace, for that very thorough update of Chinatown, what's been happening these months. And so is Chinatown right now still just a shell of itself? It's still very much shut up and quiet?
I would say that through the summer, during the daytime when it's warm and sunny, there's a vitality about Chinatown. So it's not abandoned the way I saw it during lockdown. But many times on weeknights, it's eerie. Even at like 5:30, 6 o'clock, it's very empty because locals are afraid to come out. They're afraid of being attacked. So it's very real. And there have been so many attacks. So that's why it's so great if the public would just come in and support Chinatown, because the more people that are there, the safer everyone feels.
One person had asked.
Weeknights, it's very quiet. On weekends, sometimes there's a little bit of it feels like it's a little lively. And I'm actually hoping in November, when the international visitors are coming back in, that they will come back in full force, and that should give Chinatown a boost. But with the cold weather, that's another challenge, because throughout the city there's outdoor dining, but in Chinatown sometimes there are restaurants that are like right next to each other, and so a restaurant gets 1 or 2 outdoor tables, and when the profit margins are razor thin, they can't even afford the outdoor heaters. You know, where I live in New York City, you know, some of the setups are so elaborate and they have these big propane heaters out there. They can't afford that in Chinatown, and the sidewalks are much more narrow. So it's a very challenging situation.
A person asked, did Chinatown restaurants get any of the COVID-19 government allocations to help them?
So there have been a number of grants, and some of those grants were actually the promotional material about the grant said that it was specifically for minorities, for areas like Chinatown, and yet the rules for applying for these grants were based on zip code, and a portion of Chinatown shares the same zip code as Tribeca and Soho. And so prime Chinatown, Mott Street, Mulberry, Elizabeth, Grand, Bayard were denied applying for these grants because they're the same zip code, which is, you know, Tribeca and Soho, the income, the average income is so high that Chinatown was pushed out. But the latest restaurant revitalization fund, I believe some Chinese restaurants did receive it. And then I heard that somebody is suing the government because the rule for the restaurant revitalization fund was that the first people that could be recipients were minority businesses, women, and I think veterans. And so they said that was discriminatory. And so they froze the people who were about to receive money have just, those funds have now been frozen while they hassle out that lawsuit.
Okay. That's a lot of paperwork, a lot of things that nobody has the time for.
Right.
I'm seeing that we're coming up. Some people had a question about the recipe and if it was online and what address for that. I put in your graceyoung.com. I think that's where I got this particular recipe. I was able to download it, but what I can do for Marianne.
It's not on my website. I only sent it to you. It's exclusive for the library.
Oh, it's exclusive. Okay, so what I will do then, I am going to take this and send this recipe to everyone who registered for this program. I will do that tomorrow. So everyone will receive this. It's called Aromatic Vegetarian Fried Rice. And I didn't realize it was a library special. Thank you, Grace.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
And I want everyone to buy a wok because it's such a beautiful tradition. It's existed for over 2,000 years. And nowadays, when you go to Chinatown, there are a lot of stores that just sell nonstick woks because Chinese consumers are just like American consumers. They've been seduced by this marketing scheme that makes them think that nonstick is better, and it isn't. The old-fashioned carbon steel or cast iron wok is still the best. Just like in America, the old-fashioned cast iron skillet is still the best.
That's what I do cook with that. But I have to say a cast iron wok, then that's very heavy and there's not a lot of, you can't really move it easily. So best with the cast.
I'm throwing out an extra piece of information. Really old-fashioned Chinese cooks like to use a round bottom cast iron wok. But what I recommend for most cooks is to just get the flat bottom carbon steel because it's much more practical and you have the wood handle and that's easier for lifting. You don't have to grab a pot holder. But old-fashioned Cantonese cooks love a round bottom cast iron wok. And yeah, but that is for a really experienced cook.
Wonderful. I want to let everyone know I've put all of her links that that Grace gave me, the James Beard link, the link to the poster house, and also all of the suggested stores for you to find the ingredients, the special woks, all of that. I also put, as she was looking at all of her different oils, and I had put those in the chat. Before we go, I suggest everyone save your chat, and how you do that, if you don't know, is if you go down to the bottom of your chat screen and you see over at the bottom right-hand corner, you see those 3 dots. You click on those 3 dots, and at the top, there's a little like dialogue box that comes up. You go up to the save the chat and you just click on it. And it's going to save into your computer, most likely into your documents folder. And so you can find it all right there. Okay. All right. Grace, thank you so much. I wish that I were there to smell the wonderful recipe. And, I thank you so much for your great instruction. And then, wow, what a really fantastic video that you showed, as well as, you know, your presentation about how we have to be helping out Chinatown, everyone, to be just more, to just stop with the Asian hate, stop with the the hatred that is going everywhere in all directions. But
Yeah.
yes, the Asian hate has been unfairly handed out. This has been a really rough few months, year and a half, almost
Yeah.
2 years now.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for coming. I will be sending out the recipe to everyone who registered for this event, and have fun cooking this weekend. Grace, thanks again.
Thank you, Laura.
Everyone have a very good night.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.